when you're going through your normal sleep stages, what's happening during the sleep stages, the reason we're saying you went from stage 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, or from REM sleep to non-REM sleep, I won't get into any of that. We're talking about your brain waves, right? And the brain waves are dictated by the neurochemistry. So the neurochemistry, what it's really doing is it's sensing what's going on in your complete organism. So it's sensing what's going on in your brain, like what's going on in different regions of your brain, but it's also sensing what's going on with your digestion, your inflammation, your hormones. All of this is being calculated, and your brain, this region of your brain called the hypothalamus, is sort of like the old operator switchboard, right? And it's like it's sensing everything, it's like measuring everything, and it's like changing everything. And so your body fat, the subcutaneous fat that you have, which is the fat that we see when we think of like whether we're fat or not, it's not the fat on our organs, it's just what we see under our skin, essentially. And that's what subcutaneous means. So it's the fat under our skin, it's what we see. And that is determined by hormonal regulation. So fat is often thought of as like this own category, but it is actually an endocrine organ, right? So your fat is sending chemistry to your brain, and your brain is sending chemistry back to your fat, and it's changing how your fat metabolism is working, and whether or not you're burning fat or whether or not you're storing fat. So the only animal on the planet that will deprive itself of sleep is us by choice. Any other animal will only deprive itself of sleep if it's being preyed upon, it's being stalked, or it's starving. And if you're starving, your brain perceives that you're starving. It says, well, we need to get up really early and we need to be able to go further to get food. And we're going to try more novel stuff. And that starts affecting the way you process information while you're awake. And we won't get into that. But there's a hormone that's secreted from your fat. So like the fat sort of around my belly when I'm asleep at night, it's sending a hormone called leptin into my bloodstream, and that's going through my brain. And my brain is saying, oh, this much leptin means this much fat. However, when you are sleep deprived, your brain's sensitivity to the hormone from your fat, the leptin, the brain sensitivity to leptin decreases, which means you need more leptin to tell your brain we have plenty of body fat. We don't need to store any more fat. There's something called partitioning of fuel. So when I eat carbohydrates, fat, and protein, my body might store them and might use them for energy. It depends on how my brain thinks my body should be using them. And so when I'm starving, I use it a different way than if I'm fully fed, right? And if I'm fully fed and I have plenty of body fat and I'm not starving, my brain's going to say use that a totally different way than if I haven't eaten in 2 weeks, right? And so when you decrease your sleep by 2 hours a night, so you go from 8 hours of sleep to 6 hours of sleep, you will actually decrease your leptin sensitivity, so the hormone that's going from your brain to tell from your fat to tell your brain how much fat you have. The sensitivity of that, like the accuracy of your brain being able to register that, it's going to decrease by 30% in just one night. What's also going to happen is that the sensitivity to your fat cells to insulin, so insulin dictates whether or not energy gets put into a cell or if it just goes past the cell, right? And so the insulin sensitivity will decrease by about 30% just by decreasing sleep from 8 hours to 6 hours. There's a really interesting stat that I've put out in my lectures a lot of time for years, for a decade. I'd have to go back and find the source because it's been so long since I listed it. But if you decrease your sleep by 1 hour a night, on average for an entire year, so you're sleeping 7 hours instead of 8 hours, on average, you will hold an extra 14 pounds of body fat.